Welcome to the Hey Mom podcast. This show is hosted by me, Audrey, and my sister, Rhoda. Every episode, we will be interviewing our mom. She is our permanent guest. If you have a dilemma, problem, or situation you want a new perspective on, please write in and we will share it on the show. As always, you will remain anonymous. Please email us at heymompodcast121@gmail.com or DM us on our Instagram. Our handle is heymom_podcast. That's all lowercase. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Hey, Mom. So today we're going to talk about people pleasing. It's something that a lot of our viewers have asked about. And so I'm choosing that one as the topic of our conversation today.
Well, it's a very common issue that a lot of people deal with. I think probably everyone to varying degrees experiences challenges around getting along and getting other people's approval and just generally trying to please someone else, often at the expense of themselves. So I think it's a great topic.
Yeah. And I myself would consider myself a people pleaser. That I think goes along the lines of like, when we say people pleaser, this is what we mean. Because I think everyone, regardless of your personality, is going to have tendencies toward wanting to please others. Like, we're tribal animals. Like, there's incentive to please the people around you.
Right, absolutely. And I think that's why it's such a challenge for so many people, is that we do need each other and we couldn't survive without one another. And so I think people pleasing is a byproduct of trying to get along and cooperate, taken too far. And when it starts coming at the expense of the individual, expense of your integrity, your sense of well-being, what's right for you in order to protect the status quo or prevent someone from being angry at you, or what you think is going to prevent them from being angry with you. I think that's very, very natural and just part of our wiring as human beings and as group creatures.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who has functioned through people pleasing as just a way to cope through life? And how can they begin the journey of not only being able to notice it, but also maybe a different way of thinking about it that they can kind of counteract some of those tendencies?
Well, the first thing I would say is the very thought of not people pleasing can trigger survival, panic, terror. So it's not an easy thing to confront head on. You can't just say, I'm not going to people please anymore, if that has been the way that you've been surviving your whole life. Because that will just put you into fight or flight. That'll put you into panic mode. You will go back to doing it because it is what has worked in the past to keep you alive. So I would say start out by being aware of how important a function it has served your whole life and not be dismissive of how it has allowed you to navigate. But it's not working. And once it reaches a point where you are aware that it's not working, then you can start to think about, how is it not working? Why is it not working? And what can I do instead? And this is an important point that I'd like to make, not only with the concept of people pleasing, but generally with all behaviors, any behavior that you're trying to work on or change. Behaviors have to be replaced. They can't be stopped. And I think a lot of us think, oh, I just need to stop doing that. I need to stop people pleasing. I need to stop complaining. I need to stop, fill in the blank, whatever it is. And that is an ineffective approach to behavioral correction because, as the saying goes, the universe hates a vacuum. You can't just stop a behavior and then what? So I think it's really helpful to think about any behavior you're working on. If I'm not going to do this behavior anymore because it's not working for me and I don't like how I feel, what am I going to replace it with? And what I choose to replace it with needs to be more effective, possibly easier, um, more motivating. There needs to be something in it that makes choosing the slightly more uncomfortable, difficult option easier, better, wiser than the default position of where you've been in the past. So I think that's important to think about when it comes to, on this topic today, people pleasing. If you aren't going to continue to get approval and feel secure by people pleasing, what are you going to do instead?
So, like, it seems like a really hard concept to take a default reaction and comfortable, well-worn path like people pleasing and for something to actually replace it. Like, it feels irreplaceable, which is why I think it feels like such a chokehold like reaction. It's just like, how could something be better and or probably more difficult, but like what's going to make me want to do that than my well-worn path?
Well, I think the first thing that I would look at is what is the cost of doing it? What is the price you're paying to do it? And for some people it might be, you know, your sanity, your levels of stress, prolonged stress, a broken relationship, that deteriorates because you're unable to do what needs to be done in the moment. And this ties in with boundaries and all of that, which pretty much everything does. So I'm not really going to get into the boundary part of it. But I will say, what do you hope to achieve? What do you think your people pleasing is accomplishing? And so I'm going to give an example of something that happened to me that was very people pleasing behavior, but I didn't realize it until later when I was reflecting on it and trying to understand why I defaulted to this behavior that really surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you, I believe, were with me when this incident happened. So I was driving in an underground parking garage and there was quite a bit of traffic. And, it's sort of stressful driving in those places where the ceiling is low and there's concrete all around you. And the vehicle directly in front of me obviously didn't see me. It was one of those vans that doesn't have side windows. And suddenly the driver puts on their brakes, puts their vehicle in reverse, and starts backing up toward me. And I just put my vehicle in reverse and started backing up too. Well, there was somebody behind me, and so I stopped and realized that I was between two vehicles, and the driver in front of me in the van obviously couldn't see me. And I had this flash of a moment where I thought, I guess I'm resigning myself to being hit by this van. And I believe it was you in the front seat with me. And you said, "Mom, honk the horn." And so I honked the horn and the driver stopped and everything was averted and everything was fine. That experience bothered me so much because I didn't even think about the horn. I didn't even consider it. It never entered my mind that that was something that I could do. As obvious as that is, never occurred to me. And I thought, well, I'm not an idiot. Why? Why? And I mulled it over. Sleepless nights over this. I needed to figure it out so that I didn't repeat the behavior because I could see it was passive. It was weak. I was behaving in a way that I really, really didn't like. I recognize now that it was actually people-pleasing behavior. And when I looked back on it and I kind of unpacked it and understood what was going on, I realized that I didn't honk my horn, partly because it didn't occur to me, but the reason it didn't occur to me is because I didn't want to be perceived as aggressive. I was people pleasing on a big scale. I wanted to be the nice driver that doesn't honk their horn, even if it means allowing someone else to back into me, allowing them to damage my vehicle, their vehicle get damaged, all kinds of problems ensue so that I could remain blameless. Be like, hey, I didn't do anything. You're the one who backed up into me. And if I had honked my horn, that would have felt like an act of aggression. Now, it didn't occur to me to even honk the horn, which was more disturbing than if I had chosen not to. The fact that it didn't even occur to me, and I started looking at my driving patterns and my behaviors on the road, and I realized that I wouldn't honk my horn for any reason at anybody, no matter what. If I'm sitting at a green light and the person in front of me is snoring in their driver's seat, I would sit there and wait for them to realize the light was green, even if it meant the light went red again and we sat through another light, which happened to me before. And it didn't occur to me at that time, because there was no dramatic situation, that what I was doing was really kind of unhelpful, negative, bad behavior. I wasn't asserting myself at all. But I had this feeling of, well, I'm nice. I'm a nice driver. I'm not going to honk my horn at anybody because I just don't treat people on the road that way. There was a little, I don't know, ego involved, like needing to be liked or needing to be accepted, or even just how I perceived myself, I think.
Yeah. How would you have felt? So we're just going to take the road situation. So you're willing to sit behind this person who is not being aware and makes you have to sit through another red light. But the person behind you honks at you for not honking at them. Like, they're like, that person isn't going to do it, then I'll honk at them, and maybe that person in the front will hear and they'll go and I can get through this light. Like, how would that have made you feel? Because then there is the impact on more than just you. Because I think people pleasers are typically willing to throw themselves under the bus a lot more than they are when it turns into a wider effect range.
Well, that has happened to me multiple times because I would never assert myself. And the person behind me would honk their horn, the driver in front of me would hear it, all was well. I looked at it almost like
I don't just honking at them for you. They
Uh-huh.
weren't honking at you. So you didn't perceive it as aggression toward you
no,
because you're not the problem.
I'm not the problem. And I think it was a self-perception, and it reinforced that I'm the good guy that doesn't honk at people. The person behind me, they're the aggressive driver that is behaving in a way that I don't want to do.
Even though it did get you through the light that you did want to get through.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to take the high road by not using what you deemed aggression, which most people would deem like asserting yourself. And I think that's commonly mistaken for people pleasers. What's aggression? What's being assertive? Where's the
Right.
line?
Right. And ultimately, what it came down to underneath all of that is I wasn't taking responsibility for my place in the world. I was acting like I could go through the world and operate without taking up any room, without owning my 5'6" frame. or my size of my vehicle on the road. Almost like I could just go through life and be invisible. And I didn't have to be responsible for the impact that I had on other people, like you're saying. I could be oblivious to that wider impact.
Yeah, so instead of viewing yourself as a part of that lineup in the road waiting to go, you're almost like a blank space between those two other cars that were having the interaction.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that was comfortable for you.
I was trying to create that sense of invisibility because then no one can blame me if I don't exist, if I'm not there. And I realize that my particular reaction may be extreme to some people, and it does come from a background of trauma and having to make yourself invisible and trying not to be noticed in situations because you're going to be harmed if you are noticed. So I recognize that for sure, but I think it illustrates the principles behind people pleasing and what it's trying to accomplish. So for me, I wanted to feel blameless. I wanted to feel like a good person, a good citizen. And going back to the scenario with the underground parking garage, my epiphany came when I realized what a disservice I was doing to the driver in front of me by allowing him to hit me. And that if I really wanted to be a good citizen, a cooperative driver, somebody who, gets along with others, I was doing him a kindness to put on the horn. And why that was an epiphany still surprises me, how deeply ingrained that pattern of I don't want to be blamed, how that allowed me to override something so obvious as this will actually help the other person. You being assertive is for you and for them.
Mm.
And so once I understood my assertiveness was for both of us and it reflected my desire to be a good driver and to be a cooperative citizen, I now had greater incentive to replace my behavior of being nice on the road to actually being aware of how my actions might affect other people and making sure that I did things that took responsibility for me as well as offered them as much awareness of the situation as I could. So I was supporting them in being aware of the situation instead of just being self-centered on me and my experience. I was actually thinking about the other drivers. And that's kind of the catch-22. You think you're thinking about other drivers by, I'm going to be nice, I'm not going to assert myself, I'm not going to honk my horn. You're not. You're utterly self-centered. It is all about you and your protection and your experience and how you feel about yourself and how you hope others will perceive you. It has nothing to do with looking out for your neighbor and being a good driver on the road.
Mm-hmm. Which I think would probably be kind of a shocking revelation for your serial people pleasers to recognize that something that feels so focused on others and that you are not a problem, you are almost taking yourself out of the equation, that it's actually a selfish endeavor.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd say all behaviors are in some way selfish endeavors because we are the only ones that live through our body and our perception and our experience of the world. So it's important for all those things to be self-centered. But I think something that you pride yourself on being this way and thinking of others, and you come last as better than being more self-centered and taking care of yourself. And yeah, and then to find out that you are taking a selfish route. And the fact that you don't know that actually makes it more of a troublesome, toxic behavior than something that's helpful, because awareness is most of the time what people are missing when the behavior is problematic.
Right. Right. So that's exactly my epiphany was I was making that whole experience be about me, and I wasn't considering the other driver at all. And I was willing to allow that driver to have possibly their insurance jacked up and, have this whole issue. I was willing to have my vehicle damaged, everything, just so I could protect my fragile ego around feeling blamed.
Problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think another interesting thing as a people pleaser that fascinates me is, and me and you talked about this like, I think it was probably like 6 months ago. And I was like, like, it's helped me a ton is when you talked about, why do I keep losing my train of thought? Um, you have the situation and you have your reaction to the situation. And I think, and it's not just people pleasers, but I'm using that because we're talking about, I feel like when people pleasers are forced into the problem, like take another road example, you accidentally cut someone off, you're not driving fast enough and people are honking at you, and like they're making you feel like a problem, the visceral reaction that comes from the people pleaser being put in that space of blame, it's your fault, like it literally eats me up inside. And like the reaction to that situation is so unmatched. And I think that that was like really helpful for me to go into a situation and then I have my reaction and I'm like, all right, first thing I do after I recover is, did my reaction match the situation? Or was my reaction to the situation so over the top, overblown? And like that helps me kind of find which kind of the next step to go down in seeing that, whoa, that was out of pocket, crazy town reaction to something that was so mundane and small and that's something you talked to me about. So let's talk about it for a second.
Well, they're triggers and they're touching on something much deeper and much more based in your fear of survival. And that's why they feel so big like that. And I think that's what happened to me even in the underground parking lot. It was touching that need to stay protected and hidden so I wouldn't be hurt. And so I was having this reaction that was disproportionate to the event. But once I recognized it though, and when I found myself in a similar situation again at a later time, albeit a less stressful one, I began to practice putting my hand on the horn. Even if I didn't honk the horn at people, I would put my hand on the horn thinking, okay, if this person doesn't get going, I'm going to honk the horn. And I began to recondition myself to the new behavior, even if I didn't do it, just by acknowledging I'm going to assert myself. I have a right to take up room in this world. I am taking up room in this world, and I need to be responsible for my role and my part here, and beginning to replace that behavior, but recognizing that my reaction to that initial event was a trigger from the past. And then I could bring a lot of compassion and understanding to my behavior and not just be hard on myself or be mad at myself or blame myself. It was really about understanding what was happening so that then I could replace that behavior, because I got down to the value that the people pleasing was trying to accomplish, which is I want to be a kind, loving, good neighbor to those people that are around me. And when I saw that I wasn't doing that, I was doing the opposite of that, that allowed me to replace the behavior with more assertive actions.
Yeah. And have you, after replacing that behavior, have you seen the perks of that replacement?
Yes. Self-confidence.
Oh, that's a lacking one for people pleasers, I feel like.
Yeah, my confidence just grew immensely. Um, on the road, I mean, this is such a minor type of experience. It doesn't really involve direct confrontation with another human being.
Mhm.
So, if we want to use an example of, say, you know, well, a mother and daughter, for me to be honest with my mother about, let's say she wants me to go visit her, and I'm not emotionally in a place where I want to deal with that more challenging relationship for me. I could go into people pleasing mode and be like, maybe I can just go over and visit her for 20 minutes and then she'll feel better and then I won't feel guilty. Then I'll still be the good daughter. I'll be the nice one. Meeting that belief, that value, because underneath it is a value of wanting to be a good, loving person. And that is a completely legitimate value to have, but it's playing out in these negative ways. So I wouldn't go see her because I realized that I was only going for selfish reasons and I wasn't going to be able to show up and connect with her and meet her where she was at and have a good time. She was going to feel that I wasn't completely there. She might even feel that I was being dishonest and didn't want to come, but came anyway.
Mhm.
It disrespected the relationship. And as soon as I saw that, it didn't match my value that was underneath the people pleasing. And I saw people pleasing as deceptive, dishonest, um, creating distrust, me not being my best self. Like it was doing the opposite of everything that I wanted. I was able to replace that behavior with more truthful commitments. And if she texted me or called me and said, "Hey, would you come over and see me?" then I would try to find a time that made me excited to go. It made me want to go visit her because then I could show respect and love to that relationship, even if it wasn't happening on her timeline. I had to just accept that that's just the price that I am going to have to pay to be true to this relationship and to be true to myself and my values.
Yeah, that helped me a ton to recognize that, like, just that whole concept of when you go have an interaction with someone, regardless of how close or strained the relationship is, when you're choosing that, when you genuinely don't want to, that you're doing a disservice to that relationship. And like it was shocking to me because I'm like, but they're getting what they want. So like it's worth not having what I want because they get to have what they want. But what they want when they're asking, come spend time with me or come do this thing with me, they want you to want to, you know. They want you to show up and be a version of yourself that you like, because then you're your best self. You have the best time. It's just enjoyment. But when you're going and being like, okay, how can I fit this in? How can I just make this work? And you kind of go and you're like, you are kind of faking it because you think it's giving something to them. But also, I know when someone's faking it with me. And you're just kind of like, that seemed a little off. Like, wonder if they really didn't actually want to be here. And it's not really cultivating a trusting experience.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. So I think the reframe of asking yourself, what is my value that's underneath this people pleasing behavior? And then just do a role reversal. Just ask yourself, would I want someone to do what I'm about to do to them if they knew the contents of my heart? Would I want to be on the receiving end of that? Would I want someone to say yes to me when I ask them for something, when reality, I wanted to say no. Would I want that? I have never met a single people pleaser in all of my interactions with people when I ask them that question
To swap places. Yeah.
for them to say, oh, yeah, yeah, nope, give me what I want. Because, like you said, it's not what they want. They want the connection, they want the relationship, they want the authenticity. They don't just want a yes.
Yeah. Even though I do want to kind of like point out that I do think that um familial relationships it can be a little bit harder because I've had friends where their family's doing an event or they're doing something where it's just kind of like, we want you to be there, you're one of our children, it's important to us, and they're in a position where they're like, I feel super obligated, I really don't want to go, I just feel like I have to, and they voice that to one of their parents. Typically I've seen it mostly with mothers where they say, you know what, mom, like I'm just not in a good place. I'm just not going to have a really good time. And they're like, I don't care you're a part of this family. Like how you feel, what it's about, because I think, and that parent I think is so worried about their own perception of what the family looks like. They're willing to just say, I don't give a shit what you think and feel. You need to show up so it looks good and you're not missing from the family picture. And I think that makes it really hard because they are undermining that real relationship and making it more like it doesn't matter that it's fake, just show up. And I think that can be a lot more confusing for people pleasers because someone's telling you, I don't care if you're your real self. That's not what I need right now.
Give me what I want or what I think I want.
Yeah. And it might be more of a narcissistic parent child relationship where that's more common. I don't know. But I have seen it happen before. And I'm just like, ooh, like that would be rough because they're telling you that they don't care that you're real. And so, like, you start not caring that you're real with anyone.
Right. And again, I would go back to asking yourself the question, what is the cost? And am I willing to pay the price? Because there may be certain situations that you're like, yeah, I'll go. But you're choosing it. You're not doing it out of obligation. You're not doing it because I don't want mom to be mad at me. You're saying it's going to mean a lot to her. Yes, maybe she's obsessed with what it looks like in the family picture, etc. What is the cost to me if I say yes? And if you look at the cost to you and you're like, am I going to be angry at her? Am I going to resent her? Am I going to be kind of pissy the whole time? Like, what's the cost? And if the cost is high, then you have to respect that and make the hard call and do what needs to be done. And let the chips fall where they fall and accept the responsibility for your actions because you want that relationship or you value that relationship more than you value the family pictures. Or you'd be willing to work something out with your parent, like, hey, what can I do so that you can get the family picture? Trying to negotiate something where everybody gets what they want. I'm not suggesting that you just act like a brat and like, well, I'm just not feeling it, so I'm not going to go. Because that doesn't respect the relationship either.
Mm.
It's about acknowledging and recognizing your needs and what you value. And you're like, this is going to damage my relationship with my mother even more. So I'm not going to do that. So then you can talk to her. What can I do? Can I show up, take the picture, and then go home? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's things that you can do that will allow you to help accommodate other people and what they need, but not at a cost to you that is too high. And only you know what that is.
Right. Because I do think in those more messy relationships, then it feels like it's their way or the relationship is going to suffer immensely. And I mean, I think it's absolutely unfair for a parent to put a child in that situation to say, accommodate me or it puts our relationship on the line,
Right.
because like that, the cost of losing the relationship with your mother, although you don't know what the follow through is actually going to be about that.
Well, if that is the nature of your relationship, then do you have a relationship to lose?
Right.
Are you just protecting a false relationship? If you're just completely obligated and you're doing everything that you're doing for your mother so that she's not mad at you or crying or hurt or whatever it is, do you have a relationship?
Yeah.
And are you going to lose something if you start respecting what really matters to you? And if the relationship really matters to you, you're not going to just ghost her
Yeah.
and not talk to her, because that doesn't look like someone who wants a relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. I also want to touch on, I think, another common people pleasing problem that I've seen in myself, I've seen in others, is reciprocity. And I'll do this and I'll keep doing this, like throwing yourself under the bus. I'll continue to like throw myself under the bus because by doing that, then at some point I get a call on this favor that's being stored up by my good behavior. And I'm going to call back on that at some point, and you better follow through. I think that's also really common, is just kind of like, I'm willing, as long as there's this unspoken agreement that I will get something in return later.
Well, and that just means that another people pleaser is on the other end of that, because if you don't have someone who feels the same level of expectation and obligation as you do, you might be sorely, sorely disappointed when that reciprocal behavior never appears. And I do know people who have sacrificed and given up for and devoted themselves to an individual. Like you said, storing up in the bank all of these brownie points that they're going to call on later. And then when they go to cash it in, there's nothing there. Everything was just used up. And it is devastating to relationships. But that relationship wasn't based on anything other than those conditions.
Unspoken conditions,
Right.
which is the unfair part, I think.
The other person never knew what was expected of them. They took it perhaps as a free and loving gesture, when for you it was an investment.
Yeah. You're like keeping
Score.
this notes. Yeah. And score. My goodness. I am horrible at keeping, like, I'm good at keeping score, but I don't like that I do that.
Right. And so, what's another behavior that you could replace with keeping score? If we look at keeping score as this behavior that's valid because it's meeting a value that you have, then you can look deeper and say, what is the value that I think this keeping score business is protecting for me?
I don't know, because I mean, it's definitely still like a very active problem that I deal with. I think I have a little bit of an obsession with being on the same page, playing on the same team, cooperation, and when I get that reciprocity from my partner, my sibling, my parent, it feels like they are validating and re-establishing and reinforcing that we're on the same team and we're in this together.
Mm.
And so when I'm keeping score, it's like, all right, like I did X, Y, and Z. I need to now start looking for X, Y, and Z from that person so that they can reinforce to me through their behavior that we're playing on the same team, that we're in this together. Like, and I like togetherness is such a motivator for me.
So the togetherness is the value.
Yes.
Okay, because I was originally thinking it might be something around fairness, but it sounds like this is more true for you.
Yeah, because I also have a fairness complex. Like, don't get me wrong, but I would say the keeping score, and although it might like fairness might be a part of it, I do think, like, now that I'm thinking more about it, like, I want the reinforcement of that we are on the same side to give me the self-confidence and
Security.
the security of just living my life, knowing that I got people and I have the support that I need to go out and be an individual.
Okay, so it's support, togetherness, like belonging,
Stability.
stability, more so than it's things like tit for tat, fairness. See, a lot of scorekeeping people do with this idea that everything has to be fair. And I think what I hear you saying is that fairness is more around togetherness. That fair means we're in this together, not there's some kind of equality
Yeah.
between us.
Although I would say when I'm feeling petty, like, it's absolutely tit for tat. Absolutely. But I would say, like, my genuine motivation is to be together. And I'd say my petty motivations, which still comes up every once in a while, is definitely like, I did X, Y, and Z. You pay back now. Yeah, pay me back. I'm upset.
Right. You're like the mafia going to get your money back.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so if the value is togetherness and you're looking at scorekeeping as the behavior, then you can ask yourself, does scorekeeping create that sense of being on the same page, togetherness, I got your back, we're doing this, we're in this together. Does it meet that need?
Not at all. Which is like hilarious. When I think about it, I'm just like, no, because it's saying that I have completed 1, 2, and 3, and then you separate with a line. 1, 2, and 3, that's blank for you. Mine's full. Why is yours blank? And you're creating this separation by saying, I have acquired these things or I've done these things. Now I'm just going to wait for you. You know?
So scorekeeping actually causes the opposite. Not only does it not meet the need of togetherness, it actually creates separation. Is that what you're describing?
Yeah, I would say separation and a nitpicky, microscopic behaviors in myself. And that person feels
Controlled and micromanaged.
micromanaged, unsettled by this sudden, like, expectation with this. Yeah. Yeah, because I definitely struggle with expectation of just, I have met this thing. Now I'm going to wait for you to do it as well.
And it's like a test of togetherness. Like if you do this thing, now that we've sort of broken the relationship apart, it's evidence to me that you're really in it with me.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm saying I'm going to separate us. And now I need you to confirm to me by completing these tasks or these things to bring us back together. So I'm evading responsibility for the separation.
Right.
And I'm waiting for them to reconnect us. And I'm saying that's your responsibility now when that's, I'm giving up my, like, I'm stepping out of my realm of power.
Right.
And I'm waiting for them to show up.
And we only test things that we feel uncertainty about.
Mm-hmm.
You test something because you're not sure. And so looking for that certainty of togetherness, like you were saying, from outside of you, rather than trusting that you have the ability to create the togetherness that you're looking for, is probably where the sticky point is and why the behavior showed up in the first place, even when it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can get a little bit forceful, manipulative, and be like, like, it just needs to happen. And then when it happens and all of it feels fake, I'm even more infuriated. But also I'm like, you manhandle every minute detail of this interaction. No wonder it's fake. That person didn't even need to be here.
Right.
Like, you just gave him a script. Like, of course you feel gross and that didn't do anything for connection. Like, you forfeited connection the moment you decide to manhandle the situation.
Right. Even though you can understand why you were scorekeeping,
Yeah.
because there was a sense of uncertainty about their desire for that togetherness. And you were testing to see if they really wanted as much as you do.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think I've always had a complex of doing more. Um, why do I have to have the conversation? Why do I need to bring that up? Like, I've had that issue with my siblings, my parents, my spouse. Like, I've a feeling just kind of like, I do everything. Why can't they just reciprocate? Why
Right.
can't they step into what I want to happen and know exactly how I feel and then do it for me? Because I'm tired of taking the high road. I'm tired of taking on the brunt of the workload. At least that's how it feels.
Right.
And so I think that scorekeeping mentality comes out when I have stepped out of my power and allowed just the chaos to reign. And then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm going to control the hell out of this thing because I've been out of my power for too long. I feel out of control. I feel upset, too much chaos, time to control. And it never has a good outcome. And I'm still learning. But yeah.
Right. So I think replacement behavior for scorekeeping in this situation you're describing would be something like a model that I came up with for myself earlier on in my marriage to help me with scorekeeping and to help me with expectations and trying to control my partner. And the model goes like this: you have a relationship with your husband, your sister, whomever. Okay, that's one complete relationship. Well, they have a relationship with you, and that is a separate and complete relationship. You are responsible for your relationship with them 100%. And if you're 100% responsible for your relationship with that person, there's no score other than the one that you keep on yourself. And so you're able to look at your relationship with that person and say, what am I doing? This isn't a two-way street the way that we sometimes talk about relationships. I think of it more like two separate and distinct relationships. There is the relationship I have with my husband, is what I'm thinking right now, and the relationship he has with me. The relationship he has with me is ultimately none of my business because I have zero power in that place. The relationship I have with him, I have 100% power over it because it's all about how I treat him, what I say to him, my actions, my intentions, everything. And if I want to continue to keep score, then I'm only keeping score with me as my former self, what I did yesterday versus what I'm doing today.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could be a way to replace that behavior. And doing that ensures the greatest possibility of togetherness that you can have because you're completely committed 100% to your relationship with them.
Yeah. So that's the security. That's
Yes.
the support, the all that
Yeah.
would now be coming from focusing on your relationship with them, not their relationship with you.
Right. And I found it quite liberating to get to have the whole relationship to myself. This is my relationship with him.
Yeah. I mean, which makes sense because the perception that I have of my husband is mine. Like,
Right.
there can be some like crossover and they can give you every minute detail of their life, and you're still having your perception of them, of every detail they give you is going through your filter, through your experiences. So you're really like, you can never really know another person. And so, but you can have a relationship with the person that you are perceiving and that you love and is showing up and is real.
Right. I knew exactly what you mean. And you're putting the emphasis back on you. So in my relationship with my husband, I ask myself, well, how do you treat him? I don't say, how does he treat you? I don't ask myself that question because that's out of bounds. That's his relationship with me.
Mm.
My relationship with him is, how do I treat him? What do I say to him? How do I feel about him?
How do you respond when
Yep,
he hurts your feelings?
that's right.
Yeah, no, that definitely I think is a way smarter avenue and is probably good for me to be reminded in this very conversation that that is a good opportunity to look at that part of myself.
But I think it's also a good illustration of how you can take a concept like scorekeeping, and it's an aspect of people pleasing, and overlay that with what is going to get me what I need more.
Yeah, instead of keeping score with the other person, you're keeping score with the person you were yesterday.
Yep, that's it. So the scorekeeping isn't a bad thing. It's just you're able to shift it over to where you're in charge of the whole thing, where you're able to exercise power in your relationship and have the experience of togetherness and being on the same page, because that's you. You are the one that has the power to do that.
Well, and it's important to you.
Right. May not be important to the other person.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because they have a relationship with you that they have to navigate that has nothing to do with you,
Yeah.
and that you are not responsible for.
But if you both stay in your lane, you can actually have a stronger, deeper, better connection together.
Yes. That's why when I hear people say, oh, I don't have a good relationship with my dad or with my brother, whatever, then I think to myself, oh, that's on you. Because I may talk to that other person and they're like, oh, yeah, I have a great relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how could that be? Well, there's two separate relationships here.
Yeah.
There's the relationship you have with them, and then there's the relationship they have with you, and they are distinct in some meaningful way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was a good chat. And yeah, I'll talk to you later.